Hello. How the hell are you doing? Thank you for listening to Press Play Action here on Jersey Nerds Productions. Mitchell Lee alongside Brandon Tew, and making his Press Play Action debut, Connor VanDemark. Good to have you guys here as we begin our journey. We're going to go through the random movies. Oh, we've got some random-ass movies coming next week, but we're going to make our journey down the IMDB Top 250, starting with the top movie on that list, the Shawshank Redemption. And then we're not just going to go kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to kind of try to do similar movies when we're talking. We're not just going to do Shawshank and The Godfather, because that's 1 and 2. We're going to do Shawshank Redemption, and then we're going to do another Frank Darabont prison-related movie based on a Stephen King work. Very similar types of things. The Green Mile. So 1994 and 1999. Guys, how you doing?
Doing good.
Shout out to Stephen King, right? Yeah. Stephen King's out here winning. Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good.
All right, we can just go ahead and before we get started, rather, you can find me on Twitter at Mitchell Lee 10 with one less L, because I take enough L's on Twitter as it is. You can also find the Press Play Action Twitter at Press Play Action, and Press Play Action Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Connor, where can the good people find you?
I need to get back on that because I've actually deleted Twitter after the whole Elon Musk crap. So
good.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you.
Stay away. I do have a Blue Sky.
Find me here.
I do got Blue Sky now, which took freaking forever, but hopefully I get that thing running. So I think I'm C.VanDemark89 on that one. So
you'll have to let us know how that goes, because Twitter has become a cesspool, and I would love to get off of it.
The thing is, it kind of sucks that there's no real good alternative yet. So hopefully Blue Sky can fill that void. Have you done Threads yet on Instagram?
I did that really briefly, but it just didn't really catch on.
Yeah, it kind of sucks that Twitter kind of fills that space still.
Yeah. Well, Brandon, where can the people find you?
I talk about movies every now and then. A lot of baseball content, a lot of Asian baseball content because of my job. So if you love that,
there's probably more crossover than you think.
Yeah, there's probably more crossover than you would think there would be. My handle or my @ is Brandon, and then my last name TEW Eats EETS. So Brandon Two Eats. It was great when it was actually called Twitter, and then Elon went and messed it up by making it X.
You don't want to call it Brandon 2X?
So. Yeah, I should. Yeah, that would be a great handle. Yeah, really, putting it out there for people. But that's where people can find me. If I've occasionally we'll have movie opinions on there. A lot of baseball stuff.
Also on Instagram and Facebook at Jersey Nerds Productions with various underscores. If you just type it in there, you'll be able to find it. That I am sure of. All right. Let's dive into the Frank Darabont double feature, Shawshank Redemption. We'll start with that one. This was September 23rd, 1994 is when this released, and it did not do well at the box office, which is just incredibly disappointing to hear. This also came out around the same time as the two movies that we're going to be talking about next week in the IMDb list, and that's Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump, two movies that are on the IMDb Top 250, very prominent, and Best Picture nominated, Forrest Gump winning that year. Maybe Shawshank should have won. That's something that we will dive into both this week and next week, but those kind of kept these movies from doing as well as maybe they should have. Apparently prison movies were not popular at the time, but whatever. It got nominated for 7 Oscars and it didn't win any of them, which makes no sense for a movie that is widely considered to be one of, if not the best movie of all time. If you turned on TNT at any point in the last 20 years, you have seen this movie at maybe at 15-minute intervals, but you have seen parts of this movie
Well,
for
not to
sure.
take shots at the Emmys, but we have a Better Call Saul situation going on. Like,
Yeah, didn't that go
is
like
that
0
what
for
happened?
55 or something?
Yeah, over 53, I think, was the Better Call Saul at the Emmys. So I personally don't know how this got nominated for multiple awards at the Oscars and didn't win any of them. But if also the fact that people didn't go to the box office in '94 to see this movie is kind of shocking. But uh, considering the movies that it came out with, that makes a little bit more sense. But yeah,
Praise be
It was
TNT, baby. Praise
It
yeah,
was
be on this
nominated
one.
TNT.
for best picture, best actor in a leading role for Morgan Freeman. I guess him and Tim Robbins would have both been
Were they
considered
just like
for
Tim
lead
Robbins wasn't
actor,
good enough? What,
but
that
Tim
makes no sense.
Robbins didn't get nominated. Freeman did. Best adapted screenplay, best cinematography, sound, film editing, and music. Again, taking home 0 Oscars, but taking home everyone's heart in the process, as this is the number one movie on the IMDb top 50 or top 250 in any movie list that you look at. It's going to be featured very prominently. So let's just go ahead and dive into this. Connor, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to talk about it non-spoiler for a little bit, give our grade, then talk about the Green Mile, non-spoiler, give our grade, and then save the spoiler talk for the absolute end. However, if you have not seen either of these movies, I think we're going to change that because we're going to talk these movies up so much that you're going to want to watch them. The Shawshank Redemption is about Andy Dufresne, who is he's a banker in Portland, Maine, and he gets sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences for murdering his wife and her lover, and he becomes friends with Red, played by Morgan Freeman, who's also serving a life sentence, and it's about their the life and times in Shawshank Prison, and we'll get into that a little bit further as we go along. But this movie absolutely deserves its status as being considered one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah. I, I, I mean, this might be spoiling my grade a little bit, but this is very high on a list of movies I've seen. Um, this probably tops any movie I've recently seen. Yeah, I mean, even on rewatch. So I rewatched this on, I want to say, Friday or Saturday, and then the next day rewatched it again, and was just like,
Oh,
this
nice.
is incredible. I mean, I just like watched it back to back. I was like, this is just an incredible movie.
So
Stephen King, not I guess movies are, plots taking place in Maine is my big takeaway from this. No, I'm just kidding, but yeah, I out of all the things to be adapted from Stephen King, like this was the one that like absolutely shocked me that it like took off and was like this good. So yeah, that's kind of like my biggest thing from the whole thing. But yeah, we'll go ahead, Connor.
growing up, both these movies, whenever they come on TNT, whatever I was doing, I would watch them because that's
Right.
how damn good they are, and they just suck you in. And I know definitely with now, streaming services becoming more of the platform compared to like basic cable television. I'm kind of curious, like if we'll have a situation like this ever again, where like in the box office we'll see a film gets so missed on and then blows up years later. And it's like no, TNT didn't acquire the rights till '97, but like it was still like very well regarded rental going up into it. And no, no, this Shawshank is obviously when people were rating it like no as high as they are as like no the top list on IMDb, like it's kind of crazy how that situation ever occurred in the first place. And I love, like me personally, I love both these movies so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the TNT stuff is interesting because I'm with you. Like whenever it was on TNT, you like stop what you're doing and watch at least like an hour of it or an hour and a half. And I guess on like a TNT run, like Shawshank would probably end up being a, a 3 hour watch with commercials.
I thought
Maybe a little
So yeah,
more.
yeah, Yeah, maybe a little more. And the fact that there was people who would just like sit down and like watching the entire movie from start to finish on TNT.
Wherever it was,
It's
like
kind of
it's like,
crazy.
oh,
Yeah,
if it's on, you're finishing it. Like no, like
right, right.
it's that good.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if we ever have I don't know if we ever have something like that again with streaming services and all this stuff. Like, I just don't know if you ever have a movie make this much from like, I guess what would you call it, like TV royalties, um, are just getting played over and over again on TNT because the kickback, like those checks to Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, like they have to be massive. Like those
It's
kickback
still
checks have
going.
to be large. Yeah, it's still going. So yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest takeaway is just how like well regarded this movie is. But yeah, it was a flop at the box office or a miss, and then yeah, it just blew up on like network television, like cable television. Like that's just crazy.
One of the things that I took away from kind of what you guys are talking about with will this ever happen again with like streaming and that kind of thing is there was a movie, and for whatever reason it's come up at least 3 or 4 times in the last month between you and I, Brandon. The Tom Cruise movie American Made from
Yeah,
2017, that had, and it's a movie we really enjoyed, but no one
yeah,
else really saw it. And because it came out right after The Mummy when Tom Cruise did that, and everyone hated that movie, and rightfully so. But it found like a second wind on Netflix for like a few weeks, where everyone was talking about like, oh, have you seen this like Tom Cruise movie that I never knew existed? And I'm like, yeah, I knew it existed, but I'm glad that you found it now. And then
right.
a few weeks after that, no one was talking about it anymore. So yeah, it's a little bit more of a short-lived phenomenon when it happens nowadays. So you don't get American Maids not being played on TNT 8 times a month.
Right, right, exactly. And I guess that's like Shawshank's like shining moment is just it just got ran on TNT because the execs at TNT knew what they were doing. Turner knew what they were doing. They knew what they had. They just were like, TiVo are gonna sit and watch this. The ratings for this is gonna be huge. Like, just continue to put it on television. And Suits from USA kind of got a similar run with like Netflix where people all of a sudden
That
out of
happens a
nowhere are
lot
like,
more with
have
TV
you
shows
seen
right now.
Mhm.
Right. That happens more with TV shows than movies where, people are like, have you seen Suits? And I was like, well, I watched Suits like when it was on USA, like when it was actually like running. So I went back and rewatched it on Netflix. So I think streaming services have just like changed the game in terms of that. But I mean, I think Connor's right. No matter what point in the movie you're at, whether it's an hour left, 2 hours left, you're sitting there and you're watching the rest of the movie. Or at least you're going as long as you possibly can until you have to go do something, or you're watching a significant chunk of this movie no matter when it's on. And I think that's its like crowning moment and then like its shining thing. It's like everyone I think will have that same opinion if they ever see this movie. they'll, they'll have to be like, this movie's incredible and I'm just gonna sit here and watch all of it. Yeah.
I'm very interested, like to get my hands on like the Turner statistics of like, oh, how many times did someone like fall on this channel and then stay there?
Yeah.
Right.
And like just like or like whatever part of the movie they're in, like I'm ending this movie, like I'm staying in this because like it's just wild. And the thing is like no, we're all from like no, grew up in different areas, like just the cultural zeitgeist of like everybody. This happens to everyone you talk to. Like, oh, Shawshank, yeah, TNT, it's always there. Like, and it's great. Like, it
Yeah,
happens
yeah.
to everyone, and the fact that it had that reaction is something that no, it would never be captured again, in my opinion.
By the way, this show is sponsored by NBA on TNT. Capture the Magic every Tuesday night on TNT. No, I'm just kidding. TNT is not sponsoring this particular podcast,
It might
even
as
though
well be.
you would
I mean,
you
They got
wouldn't
hockey
be
now.
surprised. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you
yeah,
wouldn't be
they got
surprised if
hockey
they
now.
did. Let's start talking about the actual kind of nuts and bolts of the movie. I thought that the chemistry between Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins is kind of the heart and soul of this movie. You get to know Andy kind of through the perspective of Morgan Freeman, which I think kind of makes sense now looking at that best lead actor nomination for Morgan Freeman, because you get to know Andy at first when he first arrives at Shawshank and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna take the tall glass of water with the silver spoon up his ass to be the first one to break at the first night at Shawshank," and he doesn't, but this other guy does, and they beat the hell out of him, and he dies. So you get a very good, welcome to prison moment there, just to know how tough this place is. And the first time I watched it, I was a little concerned that would be a little bit overblown and the prison guards would just be killing people all the time and that would be the movie. But it wasn't. And I liked the
Yeah.
fact that after the whole thing with the sisters, which is just nasty, once that whole thing kind of subsides, it is a lot more about Andy kind of finding more or less a home in prison, and the concept of people being institutionalized maybe no more prevalent than the storyline of Brooks.
Yeah, I mean, I cry every single time I see the movie with the Brooks storyline, just because what happens to him. Not going to spoil that entirely, but I mean, yeah, it's just there's a lot of really good performances. And Morgan Freeman, I personally think this is Morgan Freeman at his best. Like this is Morgan Freeman doing Morgan Freeman.
It's not Now You See Me. This is the second straight show where we're praising
No,
Morgan Freeman.
we are, but this is Morgan Freeman at his finest. Like his long, I guess, monologues, like
His
talking
voiceovers.
about, yeah, the voiceovers talking about Andy. Tim Robbins is exceptional as Andy Dufresne. Warden Norton, the
Yeah, we
warden,
got to shout out Bob Gunton.
Bob Gunton, like that man is scary. That is an evil character. We'll get into this with the Green Mile. That might be like the most evil characters ever created on television, or ever created on television
On
or TV, or,
TNT.
yeah, on TNT or movies or anywhere. But Warden Norton is like not a not a good person.
As soon
Is the
as I
best way to put
heard, put your trust in the Lord, your ass belongs to me. I'm like, yeah, this
Yes,
dude's gonna
yes.
be a piece of shit.
And the way he delivers that line too, it's like, yeah, it's
Great
just
line
chilling.
delivery.
Right, and even the prison guards, like those are exceptional performances. Like, you really feel the emotional impact of like all of these different storylines and all these different characters, and
You know
the
that's
way
Mr.
they set
Krabs,
up
right?
who you talking about the prison guard
The most
or
brutal of the prison guards is Mr. Krabs.
No
makes
shit.
sense. It
Yeah,
does make sense.
that's Clancy Brown who voices Mr. Krabs.
That's
Yeah.
funny as
That
hell.
guy's
Well,
got a ton of range.
so his yeah, exactly, a lot of range. So like his first words are like, you're gonna, you eat when we tell you to eat, you shit when we tell you to shit, you piss when we tell you to piss. Like he delivers it like so well. And that's after he goes like, do you speak English, and says like a not so nice word to the first person he sees. So yeah, immediately you're like, wow, this is not a place I like want to be. Like it's prison, and most like TV shows, movies, like you get prison, but I feel like with this one, like you really get prison. It's like this is prison. Like I don't want to be here. And
Prison,
like,
prison,
yeah,
prison.
right, exactly.
If you don't
But
like
no,
the word
just
prison, get off now, because we are going to be talking about that a lot today.
right. Just really good performances, and that's I guess the biggest takeaway, because like this movie does not work if the performances don't work, and the performances work.
If you don't feel the chemistry between Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, if you're not rooting for them to improve their situation, hold on to hope, and the whole concept of hope evolving throughout the movie was something that I found really interesting. And a lot of this stuff we're going to get into more when we talk about spoiler related things, because again, if you haven't seen this movie, I don't want to get in too deep with the spoilers until we give you an advanced warning to, hey, plug your ears, or if you just don't care, at least you're warned about it. But the progression of Andy's character as well as Red's character told through the different parole board meetings was
Mhm.
something that I was very impressed with.
I think overall, when it comes to Shawshank, that I guess we can kind of tie to Green Mile way in a way where the power dynamics that you see because of the character development in Shawshank really highlights what they're going through, and because we know like because the fact that we have the way that how Andy's trying to find his way to survive in in the prison, he's trying to make himself useful in a way and trying to find his own niche within. It's like, oh no, like I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, and find that situation where like, oh, I can make myself valuable to someone else, and because now I have more value, the people in power want to actually protect me. And I
Yeah,
think,
definitely.
and then you see
Yeah.
the same thing. Then you see the same thing with the prison, the actual inmates too, where you see how Red's more respected. You can see how Andy's using that to his own leverage as maybe befriending him, and like I think the way the actors do that, like no, again with like no, the violent prison guards, like oh they're showing their authority. At the same time, like oh, they can see it in a way as he comes with, um, uh, Brian Haley, the one prison guard that he befriends, like you can see like, oh, I can help you out. No, I can make your life easier if you make my life easier.
If you just give some beer to my buddies on the roof. And that's
Right.
where he really starts to make friends, and we get the beginning of that Andy making himself useful, trying to find something of a home in
Right.
Shawshank Prison. And I think
I
that's
think that's one of the best scenes to be honest. Like that is one of the best scenes
yeah,
in the entire movie. The establishing shots too. Like I guess we can touch on this a little bit, but like that opening shot where they
it's your
show the
boy.
entire prison and it just like they go over the top of the prison. Like that wasn't done with the drone. It was 1994. Like they had to have taken like a helicopter or something. But that would have been a drone shot nowadays. But like
Oh
that
yeah,
establishing shot of like the entire prison yard as like they're bringing the bus in is probably one of the best shots I've ever seen in movie history.
By the
Like
way,
that shot
Brandon,
is incredible.
that's your
Yeah.
boy Roger Deakins, cinematographer
Oh,
for movies like
I know.
Skyfall and Blade Runner
Oh, I know.
2049 and 1917. That's your guy right there. I want
I
to say
mean,
Dune as well. No, not Dune.
yeah, he didn't do Dune.
But he's done a lot of things. Like, yeah,
But
Blade Runner 2049 is enough for
I
you.
mean, that's a Blade Runner. But that's a Blade Runner 2049 like type of establishing shot, you know. And he was doing that back in '94 with however they did that. Like I don't know how they must have used a helicopter. Like that's the only way you could do it. Like I mean
yeah.
it just looks really cool. And just all of like the establishing shots and like side the prison where it's like, you know, we'll peek around the corner and then like the character will walk like around the corner and like the camera will be like positioned at the door or whatever. Like it's just a lot of cool and unique shots from like a cinematography standpoint, and I think that like makes it even more like yes, you are inside the prison, like this is like real, and you kind of get that vibe as you continue to watch the movie.
All right, I think we're at the point where we can start getting into grades for Shawshank Redemption. So, Connor, you want to get us started?
Honestly, I'm probably gonna give it like a because this is one of my favorite movies, and probably give it like a A+ overall, like 9.76, 9.8, even higher possibly. Like I don't go 9.76. I don't know what you guys' rating is, but like to me, it's everything. Chef kiss.
Brandon?
I mean, yeah, that sounds very similar to what I have. So I kind of changed up my scale to be more like Mitchell's. Just give me more
Hey.
range. I'm gonna go A+, 98.9
Ooh,
on
that's
out
about
of
as high as it
100.
gets.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I really don't know where like the one extra point would come from or the 1.1, but we're gonna find out eventually at some point. But I mean, I think I wrote in my review on Letterboxd, this is like as close to movie perfection as you can get. Just the way the characters are set up, the scenes, um, just the character development. Like it's about the pacing. The pacing is perfect too. I never feel bored watching this movie. Like it seems slow at some points, but like that's almost like set up to like set something else up. And I just think the pacing is well done too. Like this is an exceptional movie. It's
And
close as you can get to perfection.
and with that pacing too, that's what sucks you in too, because like no matter what, like there is no dull point. It's oh, Shawshank's on. I don't know where I am. I sucked in like because you're always interested. You're always engaged of anything that's happening there.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. You could like lose it with one scene or two scenes and lose like 15 or 10 minutes, and this movie does not do that. Like the pacing is just exceptional. It's just exceptional pacing.
It's a 2 hour, 22-minute movie that does not feel that long at all. And that is one of the
Yeah.
biggest praises that I can give this movie. By the way, if you want to follow along with Brandon and I as we go through this movie review journey, Brandon is on Letterboxd at capital B, capital TEW on Letterboxd, and I am just at Mitchell Lee. And we have lists for all sorts of things. But if you go to Brandon's, it's movies at random, I think is your list.
Yes.
And mine is PPA reviews, and you can keep track of how we're ranking the movies that we are talking about. Brandon and Connor both right on the money. This is as high of an A plus as you can possibly give. For me, it's an A plus, 97.31%. Again, I don't know where that extra 2.5 points comes from, but like Brandon said, we're going to find out at some point. But this is one of the greatest movies of all time, and every time I watch it, I'm just astounded by just how good it is. So with that being said, let's move on to our next movie, The Green Mile, December 10th, 1999 release. This one, again, directed and written by Frank Darabont, based on a Stephen King work called The Green Mile, starring Tom Hanks, who was on an absolute heater in the 90s. I mean, everything Tom Hanks touched just turned to gold. Even just this year in 1999, because a few weeks beforehand he had Toy Story 2, and then a year later he was going to have Castaway. So Tom Hanks, and the year before that he had Saving Private Ryan. So
Yeah.
Tom
And the
Hanks,
year before that, Forrest Gump in '94,
he
right?
had Forrest Gump in
guy's on a
'94,
heater.
won an Oscar for that, won an Oscar for Philadelphia in 1993. So Tom Hanks
Yeah.
in the 90s was about as big and consistent as you can get. This one also starring David Morse, Michael Clark Duncan, Sam Rockwell, someone who I did not know was in this movie until I sat down to watch it. This is the first time I've watched this movie, by the way, despite the fact that I have had it on
Same.
DVD for 10 years and I just haven't ever watched it. It was there for $3 and I'm like, yeah, I'll watch it. I'll get to it eventually. And about 11 years later, I did. This one, I think, succeeds where, at least, well, this isn't thinking, this is knowing as far as the box office goes, because people kind of knew, like, all right, we shafted Shawshank. That was a great movie. This one has Tom Hanks, directed by the same
Like
guy.
the amount of people
We should check this one out.
saw, yeah. The amount of people that saw the Oscars in '94 and were like, "Wait, this got 7 nominations? Like, why didn't we see this?" Like, they were like, "We have to go to the box office and see this one." So yeah, it makes sense.
So the Green Mile found box office success, making $136 million domestic, $286 million worldwide on a $60 million budget. So very profitable. This one, like Shawshank, on TNT quite often, not as often, at least as far as I've noticed. And the reason for that, by the way, I did do a little bit of diving in to it while we were talking about it. Castle Rock Entertainment was a production company for both of those movies, and it was bought by Turner Productions or Turner Broadcasting Studio. So that is why you see it so much on TBS or TNT, is because they own that. And hey, there you go. That's a good one to show repeatedly. This one was nominated for, I want to say 4 Oscars.
It was 4. I have it up right now. It was
double check that.
Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor for Duncan, and then Best Sound and Best Adapted Screenplay.
Mm.
Yes, and right
Well,
now
I hope
on
Duncan won. I mean,
he
I
did
don't know if he
not.
did. But,
Nope,
ah,
only nominated.
This
tough.
one this one is currently number 27 on IMDb's list all time, whereas Shawshank is number 1. Who beat out Michael Caine won for the
Mm.
Cider House Rules, and this
Hey,
lost. We will get to after we talk about Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump next week. The next IMDb Top 250 is going to be the two movies that kind of beat out Green Mile: American Beauty, which won Best Picture, and then The Sixth Sense, which was another highly regarded movie nominated for Best Picture in 1999. Another great year for movies. Got movies like Fight Club, The Matrix,
yeah.
Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, if you have no taste whatsoever. But yeah, lots of really good movies in
Oh man.
1999.
Well, I was gonna say Mitchell, Michael Caine making another appearance on our episodes.
Good Lord, yeah, Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman are gonna make every single review that we talk about. Somehow we're gonna talk about them during Little Man. I don't know how, but
Right. We'll figure
they'll
it
worm
out.
their way in there.
Yeah. So I don't love this movie as much as Shawshank, but after watching it for the first time all the way through, I had seen bits and pieces of it on like
So this was
TBS
your
or
first time
TNT.
too.
Yeah, but for all the way through, just sitting down and watching it straight through, this was my first time watching it all the way through. And it's a 3 hour movie, and I think, unlike Shawshank, I think with some of this movie, you do feel the pacing and you do feel the 3 hours at some point in the movie. It's not a bad thing. It's still a great movie, but you do feel the 3 hours at some point in the movie. And for me, Tom Hanks just like steals the show. It's Tom Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan
hmm
like just going back and forth with each other almost, and the chemistry that they have between those two characters is really what sets this movie apart from a lot of other movies. And like, there's great performances throughout, like David Morse as Brutal. Um, you talk about Sam Rockwell, like might be the most evil person on
Wild
television and
Bill.
movie history. Yeah, Wild Bill Wharton. Um, Actually, the most evil person would be one of the prison guards, Percy.
Percy.
Wetmore
Oh
is
God,
probably the most evil person on in like television movie history. Like, that character is the worst, the
hmm
absolute worst.
Yeah, Doug Hutchison as Percy Wetmore. Congratulations. I hate you. If I see you in the street, I'm hold on, let me just make sure that this guy isn't like dead. Nope, he's
Not
not. If I see you in
no.
the street, we're gonna have problems because you were so good in this movie that it makes me just not like you. It's like Michael Fassbender in 12 Years a Slave, where it's like, all right, you did too good of a job at
Yeah,
that.
you did that too
We
well.
we we got some problems now. Just playing this guy that, first of all, he just always looks like he just got done jacking off in the bathroom, but he also carries that mentality with, with him while he's playing this guy that is just the most dark-hearted person
I
that I've
mean,
seen in movies in a long time.
how would you even describe it? Like, he plays it really well, but it's almost like he
Slimy fuck.
understands. Yeah,
hmm
he understands that he's evil, and he just does not care, like, at all. Like, there is no remorse. There is no like connection to anybody. It is just straight up.
There's
I
actually
am
a
just
character that he
eliminated.
did remind me of, and obviously there's levels to evil. Um, but because he has like a moment where he's like, all right, let me try to like not be a dick. And then he just immediately is just like, nope, I want to be a dick. And it reminded me a little bit of Ralph Fiennes' character in Schindler's List,
Mm.
where he has a moment where he's like, let me just not be an Nope, I like it too much.
It's very
Yeah,
much to me where I see Percy more as like I think masochist is not the right word, but he's on that level where it's like he has pleasure doing those things. And no, like honestly, overall with this movie, like the casting spot on. Like I would
Top
I
level.
would I would argue the Green Mile's casting is better than Shawshank's.
Yeah, yeah. You
And
could make the argument
Well,
like you
there's more
could.
characters in the Green Mile than there are in Shawshank as well.
yeah, you could say that, but there's more focus because which no the Green Mile is it's just to focus on that cell block and just them. And no, I guess it could be just the nature of the film, but like I love every single decision on who they cast there because they play it so damn well that it elevates the movie to that next level because you have those different relationships between no I can't think of his name now. The inmate that is like the more goofier one with the rat.
Edouard Delacroix.
Delacroix.
Del.
Yeah.
Del.
Yeah, Del.
Delacroix.
Yeah,
With his
yeah.
mouse.
Yes. But like
Mr.
like
Jingles.
the interaction Mr. Jingles. Yes, Mr. Jingles.
He was well cast too.
Yes.
Mr. Jingles stole the show.
But like
Oh,
like
man.
the interaction with Delacroix and like John Coffey and like in the prison guards with them, like everything just was so seamless. It's like I you couldn't ask like a better situation with that. Like to me, hands
Right.
down, fantastic. Love it so much.
Yeah, yeah. I think what you could take away from this movie is that the relationships between the guards to the inmates or to the prisoners is different because these guards know that they're like the inmates that they're in charge of are death row inmates
Mm-hmm.
who like they
They're in
know they're
charge
going
of
to be
executions.
electric. Yeah, they're in
Yeah.
charge of executions, and they know that they're going to the electric chair. So a lot of these characters, not all of them, Sam Rockwell's character Wild Bill does not have any remorse, does not have a single good bone in his body. But even like Arlen Bitterbuck, like Graham Greene's character, who's only in the movie for like a short amount of time, like you can feel the remorse on his face. Like Dell's character, you can feel the remorse on his face. Like all these inmates and prisoners know that they're going to die at some point, and just the relationship between Tom Hanks, and in all these characters, and then the rest of the prison guards is yeah. I mean, it's what makes the movie, in some aspects.
Before we dive in further, let me just give a brief kind of synopsis of what the movie is. And that is that Tom we just dove into things. We started talking about Percy, and that led us down that rabbit hole. Tom Hanks plays a man by the name of Paul Edgecombe, and it starts off with him at a kind of an assisted living facility, and they're watching this movie, and Paul begins to get emotional once he sees this movie, and it begins with Paul telling his friend at the assisted living facility about kind of why and what this movie makes him think about his time when he was a officer at this penitentiary nicknamed the Green Mile, and back to this time when a prisoner by the name of John Coffey, who's played by Michael Clark Duncan, rest in peace, by the way, he died about 10-11 years ago.
Oh, so sad. Oh,
Michael
that
Clark
broke my heart.
who's big motherfucker. There's no other way to say it. This dude is gigantic. This dude is bigger than a house. Like this dude is huge. Just gigantic guy comes in, and he is sentenced to death after being convicted of raping and murdering 2 young white girls. And obviously that there's a lot of this is during the mid 1930s, so there's racial tension involved there as well. But these officers are very, they know that everyone there's been sentenced, and they're going to pay their debts with the visit to the electric chair. So they're a lot more mild mannered than the prisoners or the guards at Shawshank, because they kind of know what's up and know that, hey, their debt will be paid. And then you get to learn some things about John Coffey, and maybe things aren't quite what they seem. Did he commit the crime? He's helping people with things that just seem absolutely beyond this world is all I'll really say about it. We'll get into more when we talk about spoilers and just their day to day. And I think one of the things this movie captures really well, which is really under, and I'm with Brandon. I do not love this movie. I really like the movie, and I do think that you feel the runtime a lot more. It's 45 minutes longer, so you're going to feel the runtime more than you would with Shawshank. But I think this movie does a really good job of capturing, all right, I'm at work now, and then I go home to my wife, and kind of just like the different lives of someone that works a job like that and trying to leave it at home and how that might be really difficult to do so. And then waking up in the morning, going right back to work. I think that it captured that really well, and I don't even know if it was really trying to.
Yeah, I don't think it did, but the compartmentalization of your life, whereas like the prisoners don't get to compartmentalize, like they're that's their life now, is they're in a
Yes,
cell block.
especially compared to the people
And
that don't get to leave.
Hmm.
right, exactly. And I mean, even like the warden's character, where his wife's dying of cancer. I mean, I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. Like, I can go ahead and say
No.
that. Like, that's kind of like the basis for the character in and of itself. He's having a tough time at home with that going on in his life, and there's just a lot to like emotionality to this movie that just really stands out. And yeah, I'm kind of with Connor. Like, some of like the background characters being the way they're casted is what really makes the movie. Like, if you didn't have the 4 or 5 prison guards perfectly casted or the prisoners perfectly casted, then I don't think it would work as well as a movie. And I think it does work because of the casting of all these characters. So yeah, I also think that just like some of the scenes are more lighthearted in some aspects than like Shawshank, which is
Hmm.
it's a prison, but lighthearted scenes are still good, especially in a movie that dives into heavy stuff like this.
The, especially when it comes to that, I'm glad you brought that up because I was I was a little bit just about to say where when it comes to the Green Mile, one thing that I have truly loved about it is how good the emotional swings are in this movie. Because one point you're feeling sympathy, at the same time you're feeling anger, and like like the way that engage in those emotions to the viewer, seeing the effect of what's been going on in the Green Mile, it just puts you in this knot of like, no, all these things happening at once that just makes you feel that tension that's overall that's there.
I was kind of hoping that you would go a little bit further into that because I know that I am in the minority when I say that the end of this movie really didn't hit me emotionally. And
Yeah.
maybe I'm an alien. Maybe I just felt the runtime a little bit too long, or maybe I felt like it was trying really hard to make me cry, and I was
Hmm.
kind of maybe I was fighting it subconsciously. I don't know, but I know that this has been atop so many lists of like if you don't cry in this movie, you're soulless. I didn't cry in this, but I cried in Shawshank, and I was surprised by that given everything that I heard because it is such a long journey to get to where we eventually go that I think that if this movie had shaved off about 20-25 minutes, I probably would have gotten to that point. However, it sounds like for you, Connor, the fact that it was so long and took its time with all these different background characters seems to me like we had a different experience where it took some of that emotional uh, connection away from me, but it seems like for you it added that.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I'm like, because I'm googling it now and see if I had anything on the up and up, because I watched this through TNT, and every like that's the only time I've ever watched it through. So I'm curious if TNT did have a like TV cut of it
Mm.
that could have actually impacted that. Where
Oh, so
there might have been
you've only seen it on TNT.
I don't yeah, I've always Shawshank I've
Okay.
seen on with a DVD. But I've only seen the Green Mile on TVT. But like, if there was one time,
That's
like,
interesting.
and I've seen it where I've sat there and watched it from start to finish, and loved it. But
Yeah.
I'm looking now like at the runtime is different on TNT compared to the actual movie itself.
Yeah, I mean it's a 3 hour runtime on DVD, Blu-ray. Uh, the only thing I could think of is honestly, there's one part that I would just like cut out, just because I don't think you really need it. And I guess w- I
We
don't want
could
to get into it without spoilers.
we could touch on the spoils.
Right, right. But
Tab that.
my point is, yeah, my point is like there's really like only like 15 minutes you can cut out or 20 minutes you can cut out of this movie.
Hmm.
You can't cut out everything. And I got to the end, and you find out what happens with Coffee's character, and, and it just like that's what breaks your heart is that it there's just all this tension in the background, and it's like, will he live, will he not, like will all these characters like survive? But in the end, like you kind of know in the back of your head they're not going to, because they're going to the electric chair. But like just like there was this hint in the back of my head that I was like, I kind of want his character to like make it. And maybe that's what you weren't feeling, Mitchell, is just like I want John Coffey to make it, because if you logically think about it, like John Coffey's character isn't going to make it. Like he's already been sentenced. Like he's just not going to make it.
Maybe it was also just like maybe it's the problem with the Stephen King story in general, because I think a lot of the stuff with John Coffey and the things that he can do was just kind of like it just seemed kind of goofy to me personally,
What
and it's something that I think that a lot of
what
people have
stage
just
of
been.
writing do you think Stephen King was at? Like, was this like the Coke phase? I don't think this was his
I
Coke
think
phase
no, I
yet.
think this
So
was like Coke, but maybe
96.
going down a little.
96. Okay.
96. So he written the Green Mile from what I think I have it the Wikipedia up. I'm pretty sure he wrote the Green Mile after Shawshank was released on film.
Yeah,
Okay. That makes sense. So it wasn't like his it wasn't like Pet Cemetery, Like he's just like even with it, like when he wrote it, like he even says like I was kind of like out of it when I was writing it. Like it's not that type of like thing. Like I just think Stephen King likes to play around with fantasy and likes to play around with like that aspect of people performing miracles, or I guess for lack of a better term. And maybe that's, yeah, I mean I do agree with you in some aspect. I'm like, what is going on? Like with like when you first see it
Oh
happen,
yeah,
you're
it's
like that's kind of wild. You're like, what is going on? But once you like get into the story, it makes more sense, I guess, as it goes on.
but the thing is too, it's nice because the prison guards also have that same reaction of like, what the hell is this? And
Right, what just
like,
happened?
and they
Yeah.
all of them are like, this is nuts. How is this happening? And I think I think that was very good on how they portrayed that.
I think the most emotional I got was just kind of learning more about Michael Clark Duncan as John Coffey. And like when you first get introduced to his character and there's kind of a first flashback, it
Mm-hmm.
really threw me off. Like, oh, this movie's about to get really dark. And
Oh,
it
you
did
mean
go
the
to the,
flashback to
yes,
like
when he's
the
with
scene
the
where he gets,
girls.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's that's a brutal scene.
it's a terrifying shot that I thought was just exceptional. This was not Roger Deakins, by the way, Brandon. This was David Tattersall. Know a little bit less about him, but I thought he did a great job with this as well. Oh, he had a very busy 1999. He also did Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So very busy 99 for Mr. Tattersall. But that was a really intriguing shot, and I felt like we got there in spurts. but
Right.
maybe it just didn't focus on the stuff that I wanted to focus on. And that's a problem with me specifically.
No,
As
that's
we
fair.
get
I
into the
mean,
grades, I kind of want Connor, if you could, because I know that you're gonna be higher on it.
I'm high. I'm an A.
Just kind of if you could just kind of give your grade and maybe like a sales pitch, because at the end of the day, I do want the takeaway from this review series, particularly when we're talking about movies like this, to be go see the movie that you haven't seen before. So
Mm-hmm.
if you could kind of give a sales pitch along with your grade and reasoning for your grade, if that's not too much to ask.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. I definitely would give it an A. It definitely is not as high as Shawshank, even though
That surprises
emotion.
me. I thought
Um,
you were going A plus.
I was. It's high. It's to me like a 9.63. It's not all the way
mm,
there. Like to me, when it comes to the Green Mile, I love this movie a lot more emotionally to Shawshank. I think Shawshank is a superior film, but I do think that the Green Mile has its own special place in my heart because the fact that the way that the characters interact and the way that you have these different personalities conflicting with each other and the conflict that does come up and what they learn and seeing like those interactions between the guards and these inmates who are waiting for their near death approaching them. And again, it gets even in a look, especially this being the Great Depression when it's taking place. Like though it's that kind of that spirituality too when it comes to John Coffey and them trying to come to terms with themselves as well as people. And it's something that I would highly recommend to at least see once because of the fact that it is such a gut wrenching movie. Just overall, just the way that how your emotions will fling from one thing to the other and how things could play out. Because there's funny moments, there are heartbreaking moments, there's moments that you just want to induce rage, as Mitchell mentioned before. Like, and it's because the fact that the performances of all those actors are fantastic.
Well, very well said. Brandon?
yeah. I'm not as high obviously as Shawshank. I'm at an A, but I'm at a 14.3% A. So for me, I was telling Mitchell, I think this would have landed on my 21st favorite film last year. Around there, if it was on my ranking system, like if this had came out last year, that's kind of where we'll land. And it's still a really great movie. It's a great movie. More 4 stars than 5 stars for me. But what I love about it is kind of like the tension and the character development and the way the characters interact with each other. I'm with Mitchell though. I think what takes it down for me is you just don't get enough time with John Coffey's character, and maybe that's on purpose. Like maybe that there's a reason to like leave some like some mysteriousness about it, or leave some stuff out. But I just felt like you could have had a little bit more time with his character, and that's where I kind of wanted the film to go, is it more like showing Coffey's character more. And it only showed him in like these little bits and pieces, and that's not a bad thing. It's just like that's kind of where I'm at with the movie. So it's still a really high A, or a lower A for me, but it's still an A, and I would recommend it to anybody. Like if anyone was like, "What movie should I watch?" That's like a longer, like slow burn film, I'd be like, "Yeah, watch this." Like if you haven't ever seen The Green Mile, like watch it because I think it's worth. I think it's worth a watch for sure.
All right, so I'm definitely going to come in a little lower than you, Brandon. You're at a low A. I'm at a low A minus. I'm at A minus 11.82%. I'm not going to lie, I was a little disappointed with where it landed, especially considering how high it is on the IMDb top 250. But like I said in our last review, uh, my job is not necessarily to praise your favorite movie, but it's also not to tear down any movies. It's just to give every movie its day in court. And I did really like this movie. I enjoy is not really the right word to use with something like The Green Mile, but I did like watching it. Tom Hanks is just fantastic. This was Tom Hanks at the peak of his powers. Michael Clark Duncan was great. I do feel like this movie at the conclusion of it does kind of fall into, on multiple occasions, just trying so hard to make you cry. And this movie is so long that it does kind of emotionally wear me out a bit, to where if I wasn't as worn out, I might have been able to give those tears a little bit more to this movie than what I was actually able to do. And there's a chance that I watch this again and it moves a little bit quicker for me. And by the end, I am just a soaking wet mess crying at the end. That's a very strong possibility. Rewatches can do that for you sometimes. But still, I did really enjoy this movie. I would recommend it. I especially as a double feature with Shawshank and The Green Mile, the Frank Darabont prison double feature. It's pretty tough to beat that.
Yeah, I was gonna say if we ever had this double feature in theaters, I mean, this might be one of the best double features we.
You'd be in the theater for almost 6 hours, but hey,
yeah, fair
good time.
Well, that's 2 Martin Scorsese films, so we'll be doing. Yeah.
That's one extended version of a Lord of the Rings movie, basically. So,
right, fair. A Zack Snyder cut, Justice League plus God. 2 hours.
Let's go ahead and get into spoilers. So, if you have not seen these movies, first of all, hopefully we've convinced you to do so, because they're definitely worth your time. Or if you've seen them, or you just don't care about spoilers and you're a madman or madwoman, either one, then keep listening, because we're going to go ahead and let's start with Shawshank. And guys, once I noticed what Andy was doing with the whole Randall Stevens thing, I lost my mind the first time I was watching this movie, because he's laundering money for the warden, and he kind of talks back to the warden, and the warden's telling him, like, all right, if you want to play it like this, you're going to be in the hole. And so he's spending a lot of time in solitary confinement, and it's really taken a toll on Andy Dufresne, to the point where he's talking to Morgan Freeman, and you're wondering, is he gonna off himself? Is he might be reaching the end of his rope, literally and figuratively. And the next day, they're calling roll. Andy Dufresne, you better be sick, dead, or mute. No, that's not the quote. Sick, dead, or mute is Key and Peele.
You better be sick or dead, or I'm gonna. Yeah, is what he said.
Yeah, sick, dead, or mute is the substitute teacher from Key and Peele. Also iconic for very different reasons.
Yes.
You better be sick or dead. And then he goes in there, and he is just gone. And he's got this poster of Raquel Welch on the wall.
What movie is that from?
I think that's from Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, is that from Planet of the Apes? Okay. I was like, yeah.
But the warden's throwing
the poster changes throughout the movie.
Yes, it does.
Hilarious.
Yes, it does.
Because
originally it's Rita Hayworth, because that's what the film was named out. It's Rita Hayworth in Shawshank Redemption. But the warden throwing his little temper tantrum, he throws this little rock because he's got his little rock hammer that he got from earlier, and you just hear the rock just going through different parts of the wall, and you're like, oh, what the hell could be happening there? And there's this little tunnel, and you see Andy Dufresne going through this little hole in the wall, then getting through to that area where he's got to bust the pipe when the lightning hits it at just the right time.
Yep.
Then was it 3.5 football fields?
5. He this is the Morgan Freeman quote. He crawled through 500 yards of shit I don't even want to know about. 5 football fields. And it's then, just like this. It was, and then you see him like puke. I don't even know how they got that shot to like go, but like you see him puke in like
they drowned him in shit.
In the sewer, like he pukes at one point, and like you can just tell that like this is an unpleasant experience. And I'm with you. I just think Andy like broke. He was like, I'm done. Like
Yeah.
after they kill, I mean, we haven't talked about Tommy's character, but after they murder Tommy, Andy's like, fuck this. I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah, screw the warden. I'm taking all his money
I
and
could get down with
I'm
some
leaving
corrupt
town.
stuff that you have going on
You
here, but
know?
when you're killing people, I'm drawing the line at that. And then that's where you get the iconic shot where you just got to give it up to the heavens
Yeah.
Yep.
after you get out of all that. And then
Again,
he's
that's a Roger Deakins special. Like on his face, like up to the sky. Like just
masterful.
amazing. Yeah.
Masterful. And then you see this plan that Andy has where he's been sending all of this money to Randall Stevens, and Randall Stevens doesn't exist. But Randall Stevens has all the information he needs so that Andy, once he gets out of prison, he can basically become Randall Stevens. He has a bunch of money, he has a clean background, and he can start a new life. And I
Well,
thought that was just incredible.
Well, it was more of a situation where he took the warden's original plan when it came to the tax evasion and made it backfire on him. Like it was such an
Right.
intelligent thing where it's like because like there's a lot of little seeds they place in this movie where like they show how smart Dufresne is. You know, helping who was it? Was it Tommy getting the GED in this, right?
Yeah, it's
Yep.
So
Yeah.
he's teaching like again like this is what takes place what 1950s, so like no someone being an accountant no less is not really that common. So him actually look like be able to teach and actually show his actual education, like he's a smart guy and he's using it to his own advantage.
Right.
Knowing how to legally transfer money to save inheritance, and like he built his own little empire to himself, and then he's like, all right, time to flip it.
Yeah, I
um
mean, he really uses like the banker background. I think he was a vice president of a bank in Portland, and
mhm.
like even Morgan Freeman's character is like, that's a pretty good job for a guy that young. Like
Yeah.
he had to be very successful to do that. He kind of turns that banker role into I'm gonna do all the taxes for all the guards. Like that's probably like one of the funniest scenes is when he's doing all the
There's
taxes
like a
for all the
line of
prison
them.
guards.
yeah.
Yeah, he's like, it's like, and they coincided it with the interval season, so
Yep.
the guards from the other prisons could bring their tax forms. I
Yep.
was like,
I
this
was
is
like,
great.
oh, it's
Um,
amazing.
It just
yeah,
shows
Mitchell.
how much they trusted him and how much they weren't like no one really suspected that he was up to anything like this.
Yeah.
right, exactly. I
And then
guess that's
he
the point I was making. Is like he just seems like this unassuming, like quiet guy who's just kind of going about his own thing, and he's like really smart, and so everyone just like looks the other way. Even Morgan Freeman. I think this is great foreshadowing. At the beginning of the movie, Morgan Freeman goes, he was a quiet guy who kind of walked around with, like he had this cloak on that like he was going to be protected from whatever this prison was going to bring at him. But he's kind of just goes about his own business. Like he's a quiet guy. And then it turns out that he's like the smartest person there, and he actually has a prison break. Whereas like I don't think anyone has ever broken out of that prison. Like it's very hard to break out of that prison, as from like what they say in the movie and whatnot. So yeah, I mean it's a well done like ending to
mhm.
the movie, I guess is what I was kind of getting at.
And the thing too is that Mitchell referenced it earlier in the non-spoil section, and we'll spoil it now. It comes to Brooks is him committing suicide after him getting out and not
Yeah.
being able to adjust to the outside world. And I enjoyed how that kind of placed the seed of doubt in yourself when it comes to no Andy gets the rope because he asked for the rope from Red. I was like, hey, I need some rope from you. And Red's thinking, oh, the warden's going to be after him. He's going to commit suicide and just end it now because to him he's going to be stuck in jail for the next God knows how long. And the fact that like, oh, the rope was him for escaping, not escaping it and actually escaping, not escaping just through death. And I thought it was a very nice like kind of red herring in that aspect of like, oh, like how they're going to play that out.
Yeah, and then once Andy does get out, he sets himself up with the money at these different banks. He mails a bunch of evidence that he's gathered over the years as far as the corruption and the different murders that take place at Shawshank to this newspaper. They go in guns blazing to the prison, and the Norton commits suicide because he's not going to go down, not going to get arrested, so he shoots himself in the head right in his office.
Well, first off, that scene, like he's putting all the bullets in, and like he's putting in like all 6 bullets in the revolver, and you're like, is he about to like have a
I
shoot
think
off,
he was
like a
conflicted.
standoff here? Yeah,
I think at
he really
first he
thought
was
about
going
it.
for a
Yeah,
fight, and then
right.
he realized that's not going to go well.
This is
Okay,
over.
now this is the best line in the entire. Yeah, this is the best line in the entire.
I know where you're going with this.
Morgan Freeman's character voices over the last. I imagine that the last thing Warden Norton had going through his head, besides the bullet, was how Andy Dufresne pulled one over on him.
Yep.
And I was like, that is just an incredible line, and it's just the brilliance of like how they use Morgan Freeman's character to like tell the story. Or like, I heard that Captain Hadley was bawling like a little child when they were taking him away or whatever. Like those voiceovers at the very end are just like iconic. Morgan Freeman just kind of like using his voice to like tell the story, and it's storytelling at its best, I guess. It's kind of what I was gonna say on it. But who's so besides Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, who else did y'all really like? Because I really liked Tommy's character. I really liked Haywood. I thought William Sadler was like amazing as Haywood.
Brooks.
Like I thought that was a really good. Yeah, Brooks is awesome too.
Before you jump there, though, because I want to mention too. Go
ahead.
When it comes to Freeman, I think he really does grasp. He really portrays the prison vibe, though, because the fact that because it isn't like it's always speculation. It isn't actually truth, or it's either rumors too that he's hearing. So it really does like you're in on the information that he's getting. You're his confidant. And I really like that dynamic he really brings to the audience of their own participation that he's talking to you. Yeah, but Hayward's fan I thought was great in this. Let's see. Who was the other one? I can't think of his name now.
I mean, there's a lot of really good performances.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like deep performances and deep cut stuff going on. But like William Sadler as Haywood is probably a really good one. And like Mitchell said, Brooks. Like the when Brooks gets out and you follow him around for 10 minutes or 10 plus minutes, and then you see that he's about to commit suicide, you're like, wow, like that's heavy stuff. It's heavy stuff.
I could see some on a first-time watch while it's going on thinking, why are we going on a little Brooks side mission here? This movie just completely...
Right.
But then it comes back to the concept of being institutionalized and where it goes with Red at the end when Red gets to that final parole board meeting where he had this conversation with Andy beforehand about, if you ever get out, I have this rock near this tree where I first made love to my wife before I asked to marry her. Pick up that rock. There's something for you underneath it. But Red doesn't ever think that he's going to get out. So in his last parole board meeting, where there's 3 of them, and the first 2, it's just like, yes, I'm not a danger to society. Oh no, I feel like I've been rehabilitated. God's truth. I'm not a danger to society at all.
And that's the God's honest truth. Yeah, it's just like.
And the last time, he's just like, look, you can use words like rehabilitation. What does that even mean? It just gives you guys an excuse to wear a suit and tie and write things in your notepad. So write whatever you want to write. I don't give a shit. And that gets him out because it does seem like he is genuinely remorseful, but also that he's made progress, because he also talks about wanting to talk to the younger version of himself, but he can't do that. So it was Morgan Freeman in that particular moment, I think, earned his Oscar nomination. He earns it throughout, but that's kind of like if you were to include spoilers, that would be kind of the Oscar clip that they would use. And then at the end, you get him and Andy. Andy talked about going to Mexico, working on a boat together. He needs a man that's going to help him find things. That's what Red was always good at in prison. So they meet up in Mexico, and the camera fades away as they hug each other, and we got a nice happy ending.
Again, they had to be using a helicopter to get that shot. Like, they're just like, no way they can get that shot any other way. Yeah, I think the last scene is so powerful, and really the last 30 minutes of the movie is just incredible. Like, and that's, I mean, that's the like crowning moment of this movie. Is like Connor's correct, like earlier when he's like, there's really no dull moments and the pacing is perfect and everything is just like keeps building and there's really nothing, there's like no downtime and you're always like on edge and you're always like, what's next, what's happening, you get sucked in. But the last 30 to 35 minutes of this movie is just spectacular. And that's what I think makes it one of the best movies of all time. It's just the ending of this movie. It's just absolutely spectacular.
All right, well, let's move on over to The Green Mile, which surely has just as happy of an ending as the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Here's a fun little transition because I just looking through the IMDb. I did not know Jeffrey DeMond was in Shawshank because he's definitely in Green Mile. I was like, wait, because I saw his face, the picture IMDb is like, wait, is this the Green Mile page? I flipped back to the Green Mile page, like, wait, what? Like, flip back over,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, he was in both. I did not know that.
That's the guy. I thought I recognized him when I saw him in The Green Mile, so I was looking at it. That's the guy at the very beginning who's at Andy Dufresne's trial saying that means he stopped to reload. 3 bullets or 4 bullets each for one lover.
Right. That's district attorney. He's the district
at
attorney.
The very beginning. Before the judge is like, it shows my blood to even be looking at you right now. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. That's
Yep.
Or not the district attorney, the defense attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into The Green Mile, one that we could talk about even less in the non-spoiler because I didn't want to get into too much of John Coffey's magic and the fact that he can just heal people by touching them. And he takes Tom Hanks's UTI or bladder infection away from him, which, you know, my dog had a UTI last month. I could have used John Coffey to help with that instead of paying for medication.
UTI suck. They suck.
Man, yeah, if you have a UTI, like, do I want to piss razor blades? Like, no.
And Tom Hanks did a good job of making that seem painful as hell.
Oh, he sold that. Yeah. He sold it. Yeah.
But John helps Paul, heal his bladder infection. He goes home, fucks the hell out of his wife a few times. That's certainly a 5 minutes of just them going at it and her just like smiling the whole time. Sure, why not? But everyone just kind of doubts that that's something that could happen and that he just kind of made it up. But then they have the scene. I don't know if I want to go in chronological order or if I just want to go into all the different things he cures. But the next thing probably to talk about is Percy at the damn execution of Dell and how he didn't soak the sponge, which that's what you need to do to conduct electricity. So
that's how Percy.
That's like, Percy for you.
Percy. Yeah, that's peak. Like he's a terrible, terrible waste of human life. Like just absolutely horrendous.
Well, they don't want to put him in charge of this, but it's pretty much a deal of like, hey, you'll leave if we let you do one execution. We'll show you how to do it.
Right.
We'll train you. All that. You'll be ready to do it. And Percy he deliberately does not mess up. He's talking crap about the mouse that Dell has been friends with the entire time there. and it's just awful. And I could smell the burning. Like,
Right.
it's one of those where it's so graphic and rough, and then they show you the aftermath of it, and they beat the hell out of Percy, and they pretty much just lock him in the solitary confinement room. And then John decides, after healing the warden's wife of her brain tumor, which was an incredible scene, because it took a lot of convincing for this warden to let this death row inmate into his wife's bedroom to just, hey, he can do magic, just go with it, I promise.
So that's just what I was talking about earlier, where like they could have taken out 10 or 15 minutes when they're sitting there like eating dinner or whatever, or like a picnic or whatever it was, that like outside, and they're like talking about John Coffey. Like, can't you just cut that entire like 10 minutes out or 8 minutes out? Like, I know it's setting up like they're gonna bring John Coffey to the warden's house, but couldn't you just cut that out and it would be the same impact? Because the warden still like wants to shoot him and like doesn't trust him even after Tom Hanks' character and all the guards are like, yeah, no, he like performs miracles. And they were like, "No, that can't be real. Like that can't be
again,
right.
who's gonna
like,
believe that? Like,
you could have just cut that scene out. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, true. So it's almost like, why even have that scene? Like, just cut that scene out and just have him show up at the warden's house. Yeah, that scene is just like wild. And can we talk about how he performs these miracles? So he touches the person and like cures whatever is going through their body, like whatever, and then what happens after? Like, someone explain it maybe better than I can, but basically he vomits like
Bees or
bugs out of his
flies or
mouth,
something.
or
So
to like get rid of whatever the illness is.
I took it biblically, and I thought it was locusts, like kind of situation.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean that works too.
Because like
It probably is like a biblical reference. Yeah.
Because during the was it Moses, when he was warning the Pharaoh, like, oh, these are the ailments that are going to happen over the next 10 days, and one of them was locusts that took over and ate all the crops. So locusts definitely have a strong negative connotation in the Bible. So like that was the first thing that I kind of annotated it to. But yeah, I was like, oh, I'm sucking the bad out. I'm like, that's like the only like
right,
like,
and
weird,
then it's like, I have to get it out of my mouth. Yeah, that's.
But at the same time, like, it's like, because it's so out of this world that like it makes it even harder for them to explain to someone else. Like, oh, he's a magic healer. Like they saw, no, because Percy's the one who killed Mr. Jangles, right? Remember that correctly?
Yeah, just steps on him.
He steps on him.
Just stomps him out.
And they all, like, I remember correctly, it was Tom Hanks' character and the other guard that he's friends with, like Brutal, and they
Brutal.
Yeah. They literally witness him spew the shit out. I'm like, and the rat's alive. I'm like, we saw that rat dead. Like, that rat was dead. Like, and like, Coffee, and Coffee being so well played by Duncan, of like such a sweet giant teddy bear. It's like, oh, I can fix him. And like, I was like with that like southern accent with him, like, oh, he does it so damn well. Like, that's the only way like it really makes me really buy in, because the way how Duncan plays Coffee.
Yeah, he really does play him like more of a gentle giant, except for the one scene where he keeps all of the locusts or bees or whatever we're calling it and just releases it all into Percy, which causes Percy to lose his mind and shoot Bill, which was, I mean, Bill was a death row inmate anyway, so I'm not really feeling bad. And Bill was a death row inmate that was like, there's no doubt about it. Bill, horrible dude.
They had a
the
flashback.
Biggest spoiler in the entire movie, is the flashback to find out that Wild Bill is the one who actually raped and murdered the two little
Yeah,
girls, and Coffee just happened to be there and was trying to save them, and he couldn't do it in time.
Yeah.
Like that's the like to when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, now it makes sense.
that
Like I knew
reminded
they
me
were
a
gonna
lot of
connect it somehow,
Shawshank,
but yeah, yeah,
where
exactly,
that
yeah,
one prisoner was like, or Tommy was like, yeah, I heard this guy talking about how he killed these people, and sounds like those are the people that you were in prison for killing. So it
Yeah.
seemed very similar to that. And I mean, that's not a Frank Darabont issue. That's a Stephen King issue, it
It's a
seems
King
like.
issue. Yep.
Yeah. That
right.
those were very
But
similar.
I don't mind like the flashback through like Tom Hanks characters, like through Paul Edgecombe,
Hmm.
because like Coffee's character is like, I have to show you why I hurt so much, or like what's going on. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to show you that I'm innocent, and so he shows him, and he's like, yeah, this is what happened. And to me, how someone did not connect, like Wild Bill, to those two murders is like beyond me. Like
No.
that's where like
Well,
forget all the miracles. Like what are we doing?
keep in mind this is
You know what I
1930.
mean?
This is 1930s. So
Yeah.
like,
That's fair. No, that's a good
and
point.
like the other
So
thing.
they just like assumed it was Coffee because they're like it's a giant black guy. Like, it has to be
Who
him.
was
Yes.
holding the kids with
Hold
blood
the,
all over him.
yeah. Like it was him being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But like the other thing too is when it comes to Coffee, where I think that King, King really leans like biblically, is that Coffee says like no, because the guards are like, yo, let's free you. Like you don't belong here. And Coffee's like, no, I will pass away. Like I will go sit in the chair. Because he's more so like I want to give these people their satisfaction. And like no, in his frame of mind, like he's going to die on the cross. Like no,
I'm
he's
tired.
I'm tired. I'm tired, boss. I'm tired. It's like all I want to do is watch a movie, and that's the movie that
Yes.
for Hank's character was a Top Hat, I think it was called. I think that's
Yeah.
somewhere in this.
And that's the thing that I think that would get me more emotionally, is finally seeing those two things come together at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the
Connect.
movie.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I think got me the most.
Yeah.
But the thing that gets most people is the scene where John is executed and he's asking not to have the hood placed over his head because he's afraid of the dark.
A
They
friend of the
don't
dog
put it
was.
over his head.
Oh,
Paul shakes his hand, and all that they're one of the
I mean, the
guards.
guard is like crying. Yeah, he's like bawling.
Yeah, the one guard, I think played by Barry Pepper, is just like unable to contain himself. Like he is
mhm.
just openly
Yeah.
crying. Paul and them are very clearly emotional, but trying their best to hide it as John is executed. And then after that, we cut back to the present day, and we find out that John and Brutal both left their jobs after that and
Yep.
took up jobs in the juvenile system. And then you find out, because at the beginning of the movie, you see that Paul's been going on a lot of walks, and people are like, you shouldn't be going on walks up this like little hill by yourself. You're in an assisted living facility. Like, come on, man. And he goes on this walk with one of his friends that he was talking to and telling the story to, and shows that Mr. Jingles is still alive.
Live.
And this dude is
Yep.
just old as hell, but like blessed with an extremely long life due to John. And you also see that he's 108 years old, and he sees this long life as kind of a punishment for
Mm-hmm.
John's death. And then Elaine, the friend he was talking to, dies, which I thought was kind of abrupt. That they cut to a funeral really quickly, and then the final line of the movie, where Paul Edgecombe is saying, "We each owe a death. There are no exceptions, but oh God, sometimes the Green Mile seems so long." And
So
I thought that it was a much this movie if there are similarities between Shawshank and Green Mile, the ending is absolutely not one of them, because Shawshank leaves you feeling like anything is possible and happy and joyful, and the Green Mile last 20 minutes or so is just dark.
Oh yeah, like the thing with the Green Mile, like even you were reading that line, I just got goosebumps again because the fact that like
It's a good ending.
It's a great ending, and it really portrays it really portrays when it comes to Edgecombe, like he sees it as a curse because of the fact that everyone he's known has died before him, and anyone he, and especially in his assisted living area, like anyone he meets with, oh, you're going to die before I die, like it's just how it's going to be, and it's kind of fitting as someone who was an executioner that this is the curse that's laid upon him. And the comment you made earlier when it came to the John Candy execution, I
John
think
Coffey?
that John Candy, John Coffey.
Yeah.
Suddenly became a very different movie.
The
John Coffey.
John Coffey, but not spelled the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's my favorite line.
Yeah.
Not spelled the same.
Not let the drink, sir. So I think that the foil of having Percy's botch execution first, and then following up with Coffey's execution, was so. It really, to me, that was the one thing with like you can see, because they had the other execution too, like in the very beginning of Arlen Bitterbuck. So you can see like the process, that this is the third time they've seen the process, and you saw they won how it's supposed to be done. You saw how when it's real fucked up, and then you saw the very last time where you see like all their like to them like, oh, it's no day of the office, but to them like it's really how they're taking such care of John when they're doing it. Because before they just like, oh, with the very first one, like they strapped him up. No, it was like, okay, another day in the office. The amount of care they put into John's execution and like the little things to it, like making sure it was nice and wet, like the sponge is wet, and like all that is like I thought it was very impactful.
I'm with you on them. By the way, Brandon, another guy that was in both movies, William Sadler, who you mentioned for Shawshank Redemption, plays the dad of the girls that you see at that last scene where he's kind of
that's
talking
right
about how John deserves to. I think he said something about go to hell or something along those lines. But yeah, he's in.
Oh, kill
both
him! Kill him twice.
Yeah,
he's like kill him twice.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, that wraps up the Frank Darabont Stephen King double feature, The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. Please check out both of those movies if we have not convinced you to do so. And frankly, if you're reaching this part of the review, then you've probably already seen both of them because we just talked about spoilers. So that's on you if you got to this part without watching them. So next
still do though.
Yeah, worth a rewatch. My God, I mean, Shawshank especially, I think A+ across the board. We're not going to get a ton of those, so and high A+ across the board. Next up, The French Connection and Little Man. I don't think anything connects those two movies at all, like not a single thing. But that's the next thing that. Brandon, I don't think Connor's chomping at the bit to talk about Little Man, but Brandon and I will talk about it. And then after that, it's Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump, the two movies that were competing with Shawshank for Best Picture in 1994. And hopefully by the end of that, we can come to a verdict, which one we would give Best Picture to in 94.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mitchell. I was going to say maybe we picked the right, I mean, at least I picked the right year to be born in, born in a year where there's 3 movie of the year candidates like that.
Are we all 94 babies?
Oh yeah.
I feel like we are.
Very nice. Fantastic year. I think I was born the day that Speed came out. So
wow.
Great movie.
Yeah. Explains so much about you then.
Maybe that should have won one Best Picture. But yes, that
Yeah,
is
exactly.
that is for the weeks to come. Thank you for listening to us again. For Brandon Tew and Connor VanDemark, I'm Mitchell Lee. Thank you for listening to Press Play Action here on Jersey Nerds Productions, and hopefully that you've been entertained by our commentary, and join us next week.